Good evening and welcome. My name is Rick Hill, and we are here tonight with the School Building Committee to do a presentation on the school building, the high school building that's been in the works now for several years. The Finance Committee was meeting this evening and had asked for us to come back and to do a presentation for any of the members that might have missed it, and also for the folks at home that wanted to see the presentation that's being done in multiple areas. The School Building Committee actually has a subcommittee on communications, and we've built a media plan where we are connecting with broad swaths of group across the town, so we can share this information, field questions from folks, and get as much information about the project out there as possible. So this evening, we have several members of the committee. They're here. Dr. Rizzi, who is our superintendent of schools, Katie Pena-Anokian, who is also the chair of the school committee, TJ Recupero, representing the Board of Selectmen, is here, and also the town manager is here as well. So without any further ado, I thought we'd jump right into it, but we wanted to open showing this rendering that was just recently released. It's a digitized rendering of the concepts that have been put out there. It's more three-dimensional and gives us a little bit better flavor for what this is starting to look like as it takes shape. So these are from actual drawings of the school, so colors and structure and buildings and things of that nature are all what are in the plan. And I think that that's Dick Fitzgerald's car, I'm not sure. Anyway. So with that, we've passed out some handouts, which is actually the PowerPoint presentation. And as we get through the presentation, we'll be happy to field any questions from folks once we're done. Okay? Thanks so much. Let me introduce Dom Tibieri, who's from our project manager group, Compass. And Carl Franchetti is here, who's our architectural firm, DBA, who will also be participating in the presentation. Don?
Okay. Thank you very much, Rick. Okay. I'm going just to minimize this. Many of you have seen the roadshow, but I think it's good to give you, there's a couple of slides here that have been added, and it'll be good to give you a recap, but I think it's important to go through the process of where we've been and how we've gotten there, and there's a timeline involved. Carl will be speaking on a few of these slides. I'm going to ask Dr. Rizzi to speak a little bit about the education plan, if you don't mind. So, just a real recap. Some of you already have heard this, but I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that this is a collaborative effort, not only with the town of Stoughton and Compass and DRA, but also with the Mass School Building Authority. You have here on the side the School Building Committee members who are placed in positions there because of some experience and also by requirements by the state building authority as doing this. But as you can see, the Mass School Building Authority is our partner in this process. They'll be giving us a reimbursement of between 55, 56%. We haven't pinned that down yet, but we're getting close to that right now. So, go to the next. The timeline, as Rick had mentioned, started several years ago, May of 2010. The facilities master plan identified some of the priorities in the high school. Reviewing that process, there was a feasibility study done, and then the MSBA invited Stoughton into the building program. Successfully, Stoughton was given the okay, and that started the process where they brought Compass in last year in January, and followed by DRA, the architectural firm, sometime, I believe it was in March. We then started having our community meetings, asking the town of Stoughton's members what they wanted to see in the new school and what they liked about the old school, and kept that going. So our first community forum was back in June. We've had several since then. And we've also, as Rick has mentioned, we've also started to do outreach where we've gone to the Lions Club, the Rotary, the Masons. We've met with mothers. We've met with the teachers also. I'm just trying to think. We've met with a lot of people lately. So it's continuing along as we go through the process. We got the final approval on the preferred schematic design, which DRA, after many iterations, we'll talk about those iterations when we go through the slides here, MSBA okayed the process, and We are now in the schematic design and ready to present that to the MSBA. Just a real quick, this is how we made the decision. The education plan, and I'll have Maggie jump in a minute, but the education plan was done in a visioning session with members of the school, along with students, along with the parents. We also looked at multiple options throughout the town of Stoughton. We distilled those options to what made sense. Some of the options were the land was big enough, but there was wetland issues. There was also other considerations as far as locale and transportation and traffic. And you'll see some of the criteria when we get to that slide. We then got to a short list. We started to develop cost comparisons, and we did go through an ad reno, which is required to be reviewed. There were 2 ad renos and 2 new two new buildings. So Dr. Rizzi, could you talk a little bit about the educational program?
Yes, absolutely. Good evening. One of the things that the MSBA asks us to do, and of course this is something that we're very eager to do, is to first look at what our educational vision is. What is our plan? What do we think we need to provide so that we can give students the best education over the next literally 50 to 100 years in a building that would be flexible and that would meet current needs. And there are many things about the present building which don't allow us to do that. So we worked with an educational consultant that was brought to us through Compass and DRA, and had many meetings with the community, the students, the teachers in the building to see what kinds of things they valued. And we came from the perspective that we wanted to be able to provide 21st century learning skills for our students. And amongst the things that are considered 21st century skills are some very old-fashioned skills, which are higher order thinking, the ability to process, synthesize, analyze information, bring things together from all kinds of sources and combine them and understand them. But we also now know that to be successful in college and in employment situations, particularly those that are going to be lucrative for our kids and we want them to be competitive, they need to be able to communicate both in writing, orally, to small groups of people, to large groups of people. They need to be able to work in teams. They need to be able to think creatively, and they need to be able to work across disciplines. And so we started designing a building that would be flexible and have flexible spaces. So we could either go from the model that we have now, which is by department. So we have departments clustered together, the math department in one section, the English department, the science department, and so on. And that is a good model, and we will be continuing to use it. But we also were thinking about clustering classrooms in groups around workspaces and teacher workspaces so that teachers will have an opportunity to work together, kids will have an opportunity to work in different kinds of groups, and should we decide at some future date that we would rather have an interdisciplinary approach or perhaps a grade level approach, separate out freshmen for a different kind of learning experience, that we would be able to use the building in a variety of different ways to support new concepts in learning as they came along. And some of the major deficiencies that we,
That's okay.
had to address as far as the things that we see in our present building, the science facilities, egregiously substandard. There are rooms with sinks in them that are never really meant to be science labs, so that certainly had to be addressed. Our special ed facilities they're kind of jerry-rigged, repurposed spaces that were never meant to be special ed rooms, so we are addressing that by making really high-quality special ed spaces. As everybody in Stoughton knows, our music program is extremely important to the students, to the education that we give at Stoughton High School, and also to the community. So we wanted to make sure that the facilities honor the music program, and as it continues to get bigger, and this year we have more students in music than we've had in recent memory, certainly the last 15 or so years, we want to make sure that those spaces are adequate too. So that was what led us to, and this is an indication of the first floor, and you'll see that the classrooms are kind of clustered in areas around. So there's one cluster of classrooms around a teacher workspace. and those are stacked on top of each other in 3 floors, so that there are grouped rooms together that can be used in a variety of ways, including the ways that we're currently organizing our school, only that it would be better, but also has the capability of being arranged in different ways. And the spaces at the bottom, the green and the pink, are the auditorium and the gym, because for convenience, but also, as you know, as security is a big concern these days, we wanted to make sure that the more public spaces in the building, where we have the public come in all the time, could be separated from the academic sections of the building, so that you can have students working while there are things going on and still have a safe barrier of keeping different parts of the building separate for separate functions at the same time.
So I'll just turn it over to Carl to explain how they dovetail the education plan with the design of the building.
Mm-hmm. If you remember that diagram that looked like sort of a flower or with petals and clusters, we've worked with that as the basis for coming up with the plans. Obviously, that original educational plan, that diagram was a 2-dimensional diagram. We have to think about multiple floors in 3 dimensions. But this plan is a very close approximation of that education plan. And it's a very well thought out plan. It does accomplish a lot of the things that the superintendent just described about having collaborative areas, having areas cross-discipline potential, and spaces that support presentation, so the students get exposure to communication skills and presentation and so forth. So the core are really these classroom clusters, these blue spaces. Whoops, I can't go backwards now.
Can't touch it.
Sorry. I can't resist touching it, but we'll go backwards there. This is good. So these are classrooms here. The yellow areas are the corridors, and you can see that we have some traditional, you might say, corridors, but we also have these open areas which are collaborative areas outside of classrooms. So classrooms are organized in clusters. So there's 7 or 8 classrooms. As the superintendent said, it could be a department initially. That might be the English department, and this might be the English department office in the center of it. But it could also be, in some future time, an academy, a STEM academy. And there might be, there are science rooms immediately adjacent. There might be math classrooms mixed with engineering and robotics, and organized a little differently. It has that flexibility. And basically this repeats, mirror image on both sides of the classroom wing, and it repeats on all 3 floors. So it's a very compact, very economical structure, and it's organized in its courtyard fashion. This white space in the center is an outdoor courtyard. And at the bottom of the plan are those public spaces, the large public spaces. So there's a good, clear separation between the day-to-day classrooms here with administration areas and the more public areas that are apt to be open after hours and weekends. And there's a linear lobby that goes through. If I go back to the first floor, there's a front door and a back door to the school. The front door is the one that would be used by visitors, by students arriving on foot or by getting dropped off by their parents. The back door is where, if they were arriving from bus or driving their own car to a student parking lot. But in either case, you come into a common lobby space. It's a large linear lobby. It's actually adjacent to the cafeteria, and the cafeteria is also part of sort of new thinking for 21st century schools, where it's not just for eating lunch. It's actually a more wide open space at the center of the school that's used as a multi-purpose space. You can see it's right next to the auditorium, right next to the gym, so it could be used as a pre-function space, before an event. It can also be used as a gathering spot. Students arrive early to school or stay late working on homework or whatever. It's a social space as well as an educational space. And then above it on the second floor, we got to go forward. There we are.
Oops. Sorry.
We went too far forward. On the second floor is sort of the second part of that commons, which we call the learning commons, more traditionally known as a library or media center, but again, it's in the center of the building, easily accessible from the classrooms, but also accessible from the so-called public side of the building as well. So this yellow area in the center is the learning commons. It would have walls around it, but to a great extent they'd be glass walls, so there's some acoustical separation, but it's meant to be a very transparent open space. Again, like the sort of social student commons on the first floor, it's a multi-purpose space. Libraries, learning commons these days are more like extensions of the classroom. They're not just a place you go to be quiet and pull a book off the shelf and read it. It's where you go to collaborate. You go as a class, maybe as instruction for some kind of media training. You might use one of the adjacent classrooms for distance learning. You might be able to take a course, via the internet with some large screen like we're looking at right here, and so forth. So the school is going to be flexible and incorporate a great deal of technology. There'll be Wi-Fi available throughout the building, and the learning commons just become sort of the hub of that technology in a sense. And again, it's in the heart of the school, which was very much a reflection of the diagram of the education plan that desired it there. A couple other features here to see. The gymnasium is on the second level. It's above the locker rooms. It's kind of like the high school is today. But this makes for a more compact footprint, which is economical and efficient use of land. Land is pretty tight here. And as we'll see, I think we have a site plan to show that the school needs to be able to be built while the existing school stays in operation. The existing school is right here. The Adams Street parking lot is here. Pearl Street is on the right. Adams Street is on the bottom of the plan. So by having a compact footprint, it gives us a very flexible and efficient layout, use of the land, where we have a driveway coming in, we have parking on all three sides of the building. As we said, we have a front door and a back door immediately adjacent to parking, so that's convenient. We have that separation of public spaces and academic spaces, you might say, in the plan, and the entire building can be built while the existing high school stays in operation right next door. And then obviously, once the new school is built and can be occupied, then the demolition of the existing building would take place, and the completion of the football field, the track, and the remaining driveway could happen in that second phase. Also on the site, I just want to point out a couple other things. Basically, the features of the site replace what's there today and improve them, but in terms of programmatically, there's a football field with about 2,000 seats of bleachers, much like there is today. There'll be a soccer field, natural grass. The football field is planned to be synthetic turf. There'll be a soccer field inside of a track, a new 6-lane track, rubberized surface. There'll be 5 tennis courts, improving on, I think it's 3.5 today, or 4.5 maybe today, 5 full tennis courts. There'll be more parking than there is today, and more accessible to the parking at the middle school as well, for a function for overflow by the building being placed here. We're taking the parking off of Adams Street, putting it on site, so it's safer, it's cleaner, it helps the neighborhood, helps the safety of the traffic flow. And also on the site there's room, whoops, we're not going to upgrade now. Also on the site is some room for future expansion. It's one of the challenges with these kinds of projects in dealing with the state. They limit the size of the building to the enrollment that they can foresee reasonably within the next 10 years. But as many people anticipate, the building's going to be here much longer than that, and we want to have the flexibility that the building could be expanded. And so there is an opportunity right off the classroom wing that the building could be expanded on 3 stories. You get a fairly significant amount of expansion space there. Also shown on this site plan, this white rectangle here is the superintendent's office. We're still investigating possibilities for where that ultimately will end up, but it was decided by several groups that the superintendent's office doesn't necessarily belong in the high school proper like it is today. It would be sort of more equitable if it were independent of that. And so we have shown it in a freestanding building here. It may or may not end up there ultimately, but it will be included in the entire cost of the project because we are, after all, replacing the existing high school, and the superintendent's office is part of that high school today. And this parking lot here on Cushing Street is basically the same parking lot that exists today. So we are able to reuse that. And otherwise, the traffic flow here is, we think, significantly improved over the traffic flow that happens currently at the high school. As we said, parents dropping off would use this front driveway. So there's a clear separation of cars from buses, which would use this back driveway, a dedicated bus lane there. There's improved access all around the building. There's access for special ed vans on the south side here, the bottom of the plan as well. As we said, we have space for visitor parking, faculty parking on close sides, and then student parking as well. Again, fairly clearly identified, and enough parking to support overflow for events as well, where we could parallel park along the driveways and parallel park along the bus lane as well to expand the parking capacity without adding more pavement, but get better use of the existing pavement for events at the auditorium or gymnasium, say. So if we want to go forward here, right? And just a couple views. You saw one earlier. This is fairly early in the design stage in the sense that we're not, totally finalized with this. There's another phase beyond this after the project is approved. But we are giving a good sense of materials and feel for the building. We've worked with the building committee extensively on this to date, just to make sure that we're developing a building that sort of is of Stoughton, that it respects kind of we looked at a few other civic buildings in town, including this one, the town hall, the Clapp, what used to be the Clapp Library, the train station. Those are three significant sort of civic buildings in town. They have some things in common. They're all masonry. They tend to have vertically proportioned openings. They have a strong cornice line. So this building is going to be masonry. It'll have some of those same proportions, and we're trying to also make it, though, a little more timeless, a little bit more clean and contemporary, you might say, at the same time, but respectful of Stoughton's tradition of buildings. Oops, wrong way, this way. So this is that quick study model to show during the construction phase how the new school could be constructed kind of diagonally behind the existing school. Pearl Street is right here, the current high school, obviously, and the new school is built basically on what's now the track and the soccer field and the tennis courts back there. And then once that's in place and occupied,
Here. Oops.
that goes to the end
Yep.
for some reason. We'll get there. And then, as we said, once that is occupied, then the existing school is removed here, the football field constructed, the tennis courts completed, the driveway completed. And so there will be a little bit of overlap. The first year that the high school is occupied, there will be some construction going on, so-called in their front yard, but they will be able to access parking, they will be able to access the front door and all around the existing building.
Tried.
Doesn't seem to like that one.
Okay. So let me jump back a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. Just going over, some of you have seen this, but it's always good to repeat it, and some who haven't should just understand how we evaluated the criteria going forward with the different locations and land. It was based on project costs and reimbursable costs by the state, operating costs for the building, temporary costs that, when we talk about ad renovation projects, we would have to bring in modulars for the classrooms while we were doing ad renovation, so there was temporary costs. Those are not reimbursable. But the important thing to remember when you look at this and you have the handouts, the important thing to remember is the focus of the project was the educational opportunity and the educational program and how it met everything. Some of the other items which are important also is the impact to traffic, safety and circulation, which Carl talked about. We've improved the circulation. The phasing of the project, we looked at different locations. Some of it traffic-wise didn't make any sense. Some of it was the size. Some of it had wetlands. So we did eventually get to the...
Try this.
I think I'm okay.
Let me think that's going to help.
Oh, that jumped this all the way back again. We'll be much better at building the building.
There?
Yeah. So we had to go, we wound up with 4 options. 2 of them were ad renovation options, and 2 of them would be new building options. Carl, maybe you want to just talk briefly about how you looked at the options.
In each of these, even though they're labeled addition renovation, there's also some demolition involved too, because it was a real challenge to try to fit the district's education plan into the existing building without some significant modification. And in certain cases that meant, like in this option here, we're saving only the gymnasium, auditorium, and one wing of the building. The rest of it would be all new construction, including new classrooms, new gymnasium. Because again, a couple of the things that were significantly deficient in the existing high school are the size of the gymnasium. It's about just over 7,000 square feet, and the standards today for a high school this size should be 12,000 square feet. So that's something that's not easily corrected just by expanding the gym. You need to make it wider and longer. It really doesn't make sense. So a new gymnasium is part of these plans. In this option labeled B2, we're saving a little bit more of the existing building, shown in blue, but still building a new gym, still building new classrooms and science labs, because again, those were so inadequate. So in each of these options, there was still a fair amount of new construction and a fair amount of demolition required.
And as Carl was saying, that the renovation and addition to these buildings required us to meet the educational program, so that's why there was extensive demolition in this process. We then went to new construction options. The one you have seen, which was the preferred option, which is C2A, but we did look at an option that was sort of a wing-shaped building, Delta style. It had advantages, but there was distances. There was also, it kind of encroached on a lot of the land and made it much more difficult to build.
Not as compact.
Not as compact.
Both internally and not as efficient in using the land available. It didn't have as good a potential for future expansion. It also was more disruptive to the existing school. It would disrupt the parking lot on Adams Street, where this one avoids that and can keep that parking in play during the 2 years of construction. So for a lot of reasons, when we applied the criteria, the C2A option rose to the top. And these are the criteria that we ranked, a lot of the ones Don mentioned there about starting with educational accommodation. How well does the proposal solve and support the educational plan? What the costs were? And surprisingly, the cost came out relatively neutral. In other words, the cost of addition, renovation, demolition options were very close, in some cases even higher than new construction. Because as we mentioned, they would require a lot of reconfiguration internally. A fair amount was new construction. There was phasing involved in doing a renovation addition. There were temporary costs that in essence get thrown away after the project's over, when you have to rent classrooms, rent portable classrooms for a couple of years. You're not getting permanent value out of that. So costs actually didn't become a deciding factor. It was somewhat neutral. And really the accommodation of the educational plan and some of the other, minimizing disruption, reducing operating costs by having new school versus a even a renovated existing school. The way this color scheme works, by the way, that red is bad and green is good. So you can see that in this option, there are no reds, and there are more greens than in any option, clearly.
Oops, did I skip over one?
Skipped one, there we go.
So we're looking at the cost comparisons. Back in in November, we took the information narratives of mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, security, and technology. We had a layout. We submitted all this information to 2 cost estimators with experience doing public schools within the state of Massachusetts. They came back with these numbers. The number here, I want to just point out, is the total project cost at that time. We are still working as we're now, Carl's team is refining and having more detail. But originally the 2 ad renovation costs came in about $127 million to $131 million. What you see down here in the green is what we project as the town share. When we looked at the new construction, they were pretty neutral. They were both about $126 million total, and right now the town share is projected at $71 million. As again, we're refining those costs. We had contingencies in there, and we're working, and Carl's team has done a great job putting together a much more detailed set of plans now that we've given the okay to proceed on that.
I think that's it.
There was some town meeting requests, and I don't know if Rick wants to talk to this a little bit, but we did talk about this as a debt exclusion. The tax impact is on a 20-year bond. We looked at home values here of $200,000, $300,000, and $400,000. Right now, the projections are for a $200,000 home, the maximum yearly tax would be $248,000, and then in order of $300,000, $372,000, and $400,000, $496,000. Rick, anything you want to say about this too?
No, thanks, Dom. Actually, TJ Recupero had done a terrific job of trying to render this down into 3 categories of housing costs that exist in the town today. Probably the largest percentage of our housing inventory revolves around those 3 areas. And again, the cost estimates were based on worst-case scenario, fully loaded, all the contingencies. The Mass School Building Authority does a terrific job of ushering us through the process of making sure that we're hitting certain standards and milestones throughout the process and holding us accountable and making sure that we have to submit and approve and be approved at every step of the way. So in order to do that, we were able to then do some cost estimates based on rough orders. Now we are in the second phase of that, and I believe probably early next week, we'll have detail on 2 additional independent cost estimates for the project, so we can lock that down and have that ready for the special town meeting that'll come up for consideration here. When we talk about this, just like your home mortgage, these rates will decline over time as you pay down interest and start eating away at principal. So, again, these are, worst-case scenarios with all the contingencies required by the MSBA that are built in to make sure that we've accounted for this. The school building committee at its last meeting pretty well committed to the fact that we would not exceed the original cost estimate. So if it was $121 million and the town share of that was $71, if the initial estimates came in at higher than that, then we start looking at ways to bring in the cost back into scope into the project, not to exceed the numbers we had already talked about. Okay? Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Just real quick, the Wright High School for Stoughton, I think we, sorry. Current school is long past its life cycle. We're trying to be as transparent, as inclusive. I'll point out the websites and information that's on your local cable access. It's looping, I believe, constantly now. This school will address the town need for the next 50 years. That's what's always stated, but your high school has a building that's been around almost 100 years, so this building will be built for the longevity of maybe 4 generations in the town of Stoughton. We had put this number in here, this is based on our calculations back in December, but that the Mass School Building Authority will contribute $55 million towards this. And just to note that the interest rates are at a record low right now, so the time for borrowing is good, and it's the lowest tax impact for you. So just a reminder, we are doing community outreach. We'll be doing Chamber of Commerce. We'll be doing some of the building committees. I'm going to be over meeting with the Congregational Church in a couple of weeks, meeting with the Historical Society. So we're going around the town and trying to meet as many people as possible and to inform them. But you can also catch up with us on Facebook, and the public school project is on the StoughtonSchool.org site. So, that's it. Any questions? Yes. 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 Sorry.
First, am I allowed to ask questions about the design, or is it just the financial end that you're talking about today?
We can talk about it.
Feel free.
Feel free, yeah.
Could you go back to the first floor? I just have two questions. And I'm going to have to come closer because I just can't see that far.
It's on the
Could you
handout,
point
too.
out, and I do have the handout, could you point out where the elevators are, or if there is more than one?
More than one.
There are three. One here immediately adjacent to the main entrance.
Okay.
A second one here that's more associated with the loading dock area. And a
Okay.
third one here, which is more central to the
The
classroom area.
classrooms. And where did you think that the special ed classes would be?
Well, we have a plan for that. It's not in this slideshow, but there's a challenge with locating special ed rooms in these school projects these days, because there's a desire to get them all together, generally on the first floor, to share resources.
But not to
and-
segregate them.
But you can't segregate them according to the state. So we have them distributed. We have several on the first floor. Life Skills is here. 18 to 22-year-olds is here. The SPED office and conference room is here. A couple, the autism room and learning center are here. So there's about 4 or 5 spaces on the first floor. Then as we go upstairs, again, here and here, and these smaller resource rooms. So there's, again, about 4 more on the second floor, and then as we go up one more floor.
I don't need to see more than what you've just said. I appreciate the fact that you're
Right.
not going to segregate the kids.
Exactly.
And I
They're
lied. I
definitely
have a third question.
flow of things.
My biggest concern is the 2 entrances that go into the commons. And I know that's very common. I know that's the new school in West Bridgewater has the same. How are we going to secure that? In the morning, both sides would be open and any, free flow, or?
The schools had, we've had several meetings about security and operations. In the morning, these doors would be open for students and be supervised, but be open for students to come and flow in a certain given, I don't know the exact time period, but roughly about a 1-hour time period between arrival. At that point, all the doors in the school are locked, including the very outside door for visitors. All visitors are directed to this entrance here from the visitor parking, and it's immediately adjacent to the administration. They come into the, they approach the building rather, and there's, like there is now at the superintendent's office at the high school, there's an outside intercom with a camera built in, like an apartment building where you get buzzed in. So if you get buzzed in, you enter the vestibule, and the vestibule becomes like a holding area. And you can talk directly to an admission security person in the office through a transaction window. If everything's okay, you get your visitor badge, either you come in for a conference or you're directed or met, then the inner doors are buzzed open and you can proceed. Or if you have business in the office, you get buzzed into the office. So it's a very secure plan for day-to-day activities, and likewise for special events, it's been planned with that in mind. And in addition to just the eyes on the street and supervision, having straight corridors, they're easily supervised. There are adults at various locations around the building. These teachers' rooms are distributed. There'll be an innumerable number of cameras as well. But we don't rely on technology alone, but that is certainly part of the whole security protocol.
When you have a public presentation and you're just using the auditorium or a gymnasium event, you can secure the classroom academic wings.
Yeah, there are cross-corridor doors at these key locations on first and second floor, so the public can't proceed and be sort of out of sight in the classroom wing.
I know that the chances of an attack at the school are very, very rare.
They are.
It's just that they always head for the cafeteria or the biggest congregation of, and I guess we just have to trust that all of the things you have in place will prevent that, and we know now that police respond better than they did at Columbine. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have a couple. First, thank you for what you guys have done for the town. Certain members of the MSBA Building Committee, great job, cannot deny that. I know on the March 24th meeting, they talked about 2 separate bonds from the bond company. Sorry, Eric. 2 separate bonds from the bond company. Are they gonna just go 1 bond or 2 bonds? That's what people are calling and asking me questions.
I think it was we were talking about the vote
About the
was broken
superintendent's
up
office?
separately, but the bond, the way I understand it, John, David, I'm sorry, is that, you know, most construction project, 1 construction project overall, 1 bond.
That's what I figured, but I just wanna let the residents know that.
I will follow up on what was said in that committee meeting, I'm sure I'll double check.
I actually have 14 questions I gave to Chairman of the Building Committee, Mr. Recupero,
Okay.
School Committee Chair, Katie Pinanokian, and Dr. Rizzi, so questions can be answered. My question is, these schools run more efficiently with the new systems and heating and air conditioning, whole 9 yards, but how much more money is it gonna be to actually run the school now? Will that be on with the, when we get the final price, say if it's $130 million,
That
how much more on
information-
top of that will, you know, to run the school, is it?
That information will be available. I don't know it off the top of my head, but.
Oh, I understand that, but it
that's
will be
actually
available?
One of the requirements of the MSBA is that in funding the construction of the school, they also want to ensure that districts have the funds to operate the school, so they require a submission of the operating budget too. You know, how many custodians you're going to have, what's the budget for utilities, and
Yeah, my biggest
and
thing is
so forth.
utilities, heat, AC,
Yeah.
the whole 9 yards, and,
Yes.
all right, thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, I have a couple of questions. On the setup here for the locker room, that's below ground?
No, it's on,
Gymnasium is on the second floor?
the locker rooms are at the first floor,
Gymnasium is 1 flight up?
1 flight up.
It'd be handicap accessible?
Yes.
Yes.
There's an elevator right there.
Just with an elevator,
Yes.
okay? The locker room leading out to the fields,
Yes.
on this page that says site plan. Can you go to, flip
want
to
a
that
site plan?
section
Sure.
there, please?
Right there.
Right there. The exit from the locker room to the football field, the players have to walk through the parking lot?
Well, they cross right at that crosswalk right there.
Yeah.
See that? So this bump is the exit. That's where the stair is,
Okay.
right there. Football field's right there. There's sidewalks here, right
So they
across
got to
there.
go through the parking lot to this little bump out?
They have to cross the parking lot on a crosswalk,
Yeah, I
yes.
see that, right there, that
Yes.
little white spot.
But that's a plaza right there in front of the building, and then there's a crosswalk.
Okay. The other thing that I had regarding the gymnasium, stands on both sides?
Yes.
Okay. The way this is depicted, the way you have it in the gymnasium, you're showing three-point lines on the side baskets also?
Yes?
Okay, I'm interested in that because I run the basketball program. Will the stands be out beyond the side hoops, or will they be in front of the side hoops?
They go beyond it. The side hoops are retractable, so you can get them out of the way for a varsity game, and you pull out the bleachers
Pull
so
the
they
bleachers
don't,
out.
they don't block anyone's view.
All right, so what you're saying is that when we use it in the weekends for the youth groups, and we use the side courts, then the stands
The
are
cross
not...
courts, you mean?
Yeah, we use this cross court.
Yeah.
And you cannot use the stands at all.
No. You maybe use the first row, but you're on the end lines.
Not the way the
You're
stands...
not on the side
Yeah,
lines.
not the way the stands are made today, because they have to be locked in place.
No, they have ones with dual or even multiple locking positions. You can pull out just 2 rows or 3 rows if that's what you'd like and
Right.
stop it. Or you could pull out the whole
That's what
20
you're pro-
rows.
Okay, is that what you're proposing for that?
We can. We haven't gotten to that level of detail yet, but we
No,
can.
I'd be very concerned about that.
Okay.
As to where the courts are and everything. That's it for the time being. Oh, also, one other thing. Entrance to the gym facility itself. Separate entry?
It could be. If it were, say, a Saturday or something, and
Right.
there were coaches here supervising, you can enter directly into the locker rooms.
Like going upstairs? Well, not
Well-
using the locker room.
Well, even not using the locker room, there are stairs right here. You could enter the stairway and just go right up directly to the gym without going in the locker rooms.
So if I use those gyms on a Saturday or a Sunday to get to the second floor,
Yep.
I have to go up a flight of stairs, is there going to be an elevator nearby for those?
There is.
That's at the other end of a corridor.
That's correct. It's
you also-
surrounding the gym, but
And
right
where
there.
are the bathrooms in the gym area?
Right, the gray area right there?
That's bathrooms.
Yes. So that same corridor
All
with the
right, so
stair and
there- so what
elevator.
you're saying is that there's a separate entry that we don't need to open or expose to the
Exactly.
rest of the school just to use that facility?
Exactly.
Okay. Same thing with the auditorium. Is that a separate entrance, or is it,
With the auditorium, you'd open up the lobby space too, because one of the major entrances are on the lobby side.
right?
You know, there are minor entrances on the other side or exits, but really you'd want to open up the lobby to use the auditorium.
Correct, okay.
But again, you can still close off the rest of the school, you know, and
Yeah,
keep
no,
just
I
the yellow area.
understand that.
Right.
I like the idea of closing off the rest of the school.
Yeah.
You're surprised what we have to
Yep.
do now. All right, that answers my questions.
Okay.
For the time being.
Thanks.
Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you very much. My question has to do with what we have today in the high school for furnishings, equipment. Does the amount of inventory we have today satisfy the needs of the new school? And if there's a difference between what we have and what we need, are there any costs that we have to think about post-construction to make sure that the space is being used properly? I'll bring one example. I noticed there's a black box theater in the design. The black box theater, just a room with black walls, is going to cost some money to build, but then you have to equip it with lighting and spotlights, floodlights,
Yes.
all those kinds of things. How many costs are not represented in the number when you look at what we have and what we're short to meet the needs?
Yeah, if you go to the budget sheet, everything is actually included, virtually
is.
everything. We say consumables or not, but there's a line item for pure construction cost, like the black box theater. Then there's another line if there are any temporary costs. Unfortunately, for new construction, there's minimal temporary costs. But then there's furnishings, technology, and equipment. So that's,
And all of that is included, there won't be any
and-
gaps.
at this point, we're budgeting for all new. We understand there might be some pieces of equipment, some furniture that's salvageable from the existing high school, but we're budgeting for all new right now. And this district, if they want, could either reduce the budget for new, or they could, you know, reassign that furniture to other schools if it has value. But there definitely is a line item for the equipment, like the lights in the black box theater,
Okay.
and the desks and the teachers' desks and computers and so forth.
The cost of that black box theater was, what is that number about anyway, in terms of, is there a round estimate of what that portion?
Well, we don't
of
really isolate that, but I mean, it is basically, as you say, a large empty space painted black with a lighting grid. We may have some retractable seating in there to make it a presentation space, not just a flat floor, but have a few rows of bleacher-like seating to make it a presentation space as well as a rehearsal space
Okay.
in there. But it's, and it'll also have some curtains as well to aid in its...
And the room will be secured when it's not being used. I imagine you have security measures to,
Sure, the idea is that it actually becomes a drama classroom on a day-to-day basis. So there's a
Right.
drama teacher assigned to it. And like, you know, the band and music rooms, there are teachers.
no, I'm
Using
picturing like a
those.
black hole in the middle of a school and wondering what kids would use that room for, and that's kind of why I was asking. I mean, we
Well,
don't,
we hope,
you know,
we
hope it's
actually hope
secured, right?
students use it or teachers use it.
The right way, yeah.
It is kind of a multi-purpose space that, you know, the English teachers might want to come down and have some kids put on a little play, you know, act out some scenes, and so forth. And if it's not scheduled for a drama classroom, it might be available to, you know, another department, another
Okay,
teacher.
thank you.
Sure.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Can we go back to the auditorium, please?
Sure.
If I'm in my wheelchair, how would I get up onto the stage?
We have that addressed that everything is at grade. You come in at grade from a parking spot or getting dropped off. You enter the auditorium at grade. It's flat. The main cross aisle is flat, and the stage is at that same elevation.
So I'll be able to get onto the stage if I was performing?
Yes, from inside, if you were in the audience, say in an award ceremony and you had to come up to the stage, there's access to the stage from the audience side. If you were a performer, you come backstage with all the other performers, you're at the same level in a wheelchair and you can get right on the stage.
Okay, I just
And-
couldn't
and
tell. I
the-
couldn't tell if there was stairs or not.
And the front half of the auditorium is sloped, and you can also get down to that level, the so-called orchestra level, also in a wheelchair. That's accessible. And the back of the auditorium on the next floor up, oops, which way am I going? This way? The back of the auditorium is accessible from the second floor, so if you came up the elevator, you could choose to sit at that level as well. So there's multiple locations that are accessible within the auditorium, and the stage and the orchestra levels are also accessible. The entire school is accessible. We don't have like dedicated unisex handicap bathrooms. Every toilet room in the school
No,
is
I
accessible.
appreciate that. It's just that myself and a lot of people who are in the aging are not familiar with these diagrams, and I'm just trying to point out to some of my friends I know who might be watching on TV tonight that don't worry, it is accessible, because we don't
It
have that
is.
accessibility now, and we don't want to spend this kind of money if it's going to be no good to us.
No,
Thank you.
We try to make it what's called universally accessible, not just, you know, a dedicated ramp where everyone else is using stairs. For instance, on the first floor, there is a change in level to follow the slope and to give us more ceiling height where we want it in the commons area. That change in elevation happens in a corridor. So the entire corridor is ramped. So everyone uses the same space. We don't have a set of stairs and then a ramp or a lift. So it's universal accessibility.
Hey, Rick?
Okay.
Thank you,
I know
Carl.
you have a finance committee meeting now, right?
Well, the Finance Committee does.
Okay.
So if there weren't any other questions, we know we're bumping up against the Finance Committee's scheduled meeting at 8 o'clock, so we're running a little bit over. So I just wanted to thank Carl and Dom for coming in and running through the project. You can see that there's an awful lot of meat behind the scenes, a ton of work that's been done to bring the project to where it is today. And, you know, the committee is absolutely willing to answer any questions that come up. There's a website dedicated to the school building. There's a Facebook page. You can access them through the high school. All of the school committee, the high school building committee meetings and the subgroup working teams are all televised and are reviewable on Comcast, and minutes are available, CDs are available, they're available on SMAC. So transparency is the word here. We want people to be able to know as much about this project as they care to. And we're hoping that people really want to know a lot about the project. If you get a chance, if you can't do anything else, go out and find the educational plan on the site and read it. It's 50 pages long, but it is incredibly comprehensive and it tells the story. MSBA actually paid compliments to the team, Ms. Miller and the team of teachers and folks that put that together. It's well thought out. It's the basis and foundation for what was since developed. So anyways, they've done a terrific job. So thank you, and we appreciate you letting us run over a little bit.
Thank you.